Olusimbijona, your lecturer in this course, Introduction to Teaching Skills. This video has been made possible by East Africa Institute of Learning, located at Kitende along Entebbe Road. Teachers. For a teacher to be remembered, for a teacher to assist in the attainment of the desired objectives, he or she should have the right set of teaching skills. This video, therefore, is to provide an introductory framework to ensure that before we dive into the concept of teaching approaches and teaching methods, you have an overview of what is expected of you. I would like to thank the initial developer of this PowerPoint layout. This is what he summarized teaching to be. Teaching involves the truth of the content. Teaching involves enough information. Provide enough information to the learner. Teaching involves being acceptable. Are you acceptable by the learner? Is the content acceptable? Teaching involves clarity. Can the students, is your information clear that you're delivering to the students? Teaching involves being honest. Honest, set a good example. Teaching should be interesting. Teaching is a noble cause. Let's not always think about the pay. Teaching is giving. Teaching is an art, and therefore, we need to work around the clock to develop this art. Teaching is more than just reading from a book and reproducing content that has already been prepared. In the course of the teaching, the activities outlined should be based on defined objectives. As teaching is happening, there should be a two-way flow of information. Therefore, we can say a teaching skill is that set of teaching behaviors of the teacher that bring about the desired changes in pupil behavior. Allen and Ryan in 1966 identified a set of teaching skills, and we can summarize them as noted. The teaching skills that a teacher should have range from stimulation, induction, have a proper closure. They should be silent and nonverbal clues, fluency in asking questions, lecturing, completeness of the communication. Ryan and Allen came up with those teaching skills. What is teaching? Teaching is a process. It is ongoing. It is intended to change the behavior of the learner. Yes, it is an art of communicating with the sole aim of impacting on the audience. Now, we can say that teaching is like fishing. Different types of fish, you use different methods to get them. So similarly, you need to remember not to stick to one set of methods, but use different variations in methods so as to enable learning by the different sets of learners. Teaching is like good, beautiful music, where the instructional materials are the instruments. And when played alone, they make a sound. But when you play them together, you get rhythm, you get the tune, you get the feeling. So therefore, in a lesson, it would be nice to incorporate several teaching methods. Now, I'm talking about methods. There's a whole set of videos on methods. But allow me emphasize this, that a method is that procedure, the process of attaining a particular objective. And I'll have a video on full details of teaching methods. Teaching skills include the skill of an introduction. Your introduction should be stimulating. The skill of probing questions. You need to use questions that are probing. You should have the skill of explanation. You should have the skill of illustrating your example. You should have the skill of reinforcement. Enforce what you've taught. You should have the skill of stimulus variation. Vary the stimulus. Attract the different types of individuals. And along the continuum, as the lesson is happening, the love of the lesson may drop. Keep the love high for your lesson. The skill of classroom management and the skill of the blackboard. These are very important skills that you need to have as a teacher. Now, the teaching dimension, we have the teacher and we have the student. And then there is the subject. Now, there is an interplay among the three dimensions. Now, we have two gentlemen that came up with this model of classroom teaching. Now, in this approach to classroom teaching, it should be noted that we have what we call the presage variable. The presage variable is the teacher. Now, in this particular regard, for effective classroom teaching, the teacher's character can play a role. Also, the teacher training can play a role. Not forgetting the teacher's personal experiences. So there is that variable, the presage variable. Then we have the context variable. These are situational variables related to the environment. And what do these include? It can include the learner's characteristics, the personalities, the school, the community. These play a role in the teaching learning sphere. Then we have the process variables, the behavior of the teacher and learner. And then we have the product variables. In other words, the outcomes of the teaching learning phase. While the process variables, what happens during the instruction. So keep this model in mind that various variables play a role in the teaching learning process. Bandura came up with the reciprocal determinism model. And in this one, we see the person, let it be the student or the teacher, the environment. These two, the environment and the student, there is an interaction between these two variables. And the environmental variables can have an impact on the personality, beliefs and attitudes. And in turn, these environment and the person play a role in determining the behavior. Once we have the right behavior, then we shall have the desired learning outcomes. By the way, why are we teaching? We teach to create knowledge. We teach to build awareness. We teach to improve feelings. We teach to bring about behavior change. And we said the whole process of teaching involves the teacher who should be well prepared. There is a message which should be clear, accurate, brief, and specific. And there are those who are taught, who need to be sensitized, who needs to be very receptive. Now, the teaching tree, there is what we call the teaching tree. And when you understand the teaching tree, you'll come to appreciate the value of the different dimensions that contribute to learning. Now, we have the knowledge. We have the knowledge. We have the attitude. We have the practice. Now, this knowledge leads to knowing. And when there is knowing, the cognitive domain of the child is stimulated. Then we are impacting on the attitude of the learners, which we regard as the being. When we focus on the being, the psychomotor domain is developed. Now, then there is practicing, the doing. Let the children do. This affects the affective domain. So therefore, the teaching, the cognitive domain, motivated by the knowledge, and the psychomotor domain, which has the feelings and interests, these two will impact on the affective domain, which is the doing. I go back. So these two have a very big impact on the affective domain. So teaching should be on a regular basis, and the regular basis should stimulate positive feeling, liking of the subject. Once the subject is liked, then the subject can be internally absorbed, retained, and that is what we call internalization. So some of you children quickly, students drop your subjects. They don't love the subject because there is no feeling, and therefore internalization was not achieved. On the other side, whenever it is needed, the cognitive domain provides and also recalls the stored facts, and automatically, that is what we call automatism. So it is important that your students are able to recall stored information, that aspect of the teaching tree. Now, I would like to dive into what we call call them the rules of teaching. Teaching should be learner-oriented. Can also have teaching that is teacher-oriented. You can have a variation of micro-teaching, macro-teaching, active and passive. Keep that in mind as you also remember that these teaching strategies have an impact on the teaching methods. I'm not going to spend much on teaching methods because there is a video that's specifically dedicated to teaching methods. Now, criteria of good teaching. Good teaching involves good concept, thorough preparation. Good teaching involves organized content, lesson planning. Good teaching involves sequencing. Good teaching involves relevance. What you are teaching, is it relevant to the learners? And also, good teaching should be learner-oriented. Teaching practice. In teaching practice, please remember, set the induction. Remember to introduce the topic. Remember to have very good topic organization. Remember to reinforce or stimulate, and remember to summarize. Now, in preparation for teaching, remember to prepare schemes of work. Remember to have topic lists and lesson plans. There are whole videos for you to watch on preparing schemes of work and also lesson plans. Now, what is a topic list? Topic lists, you go to the National Curriculum Development Syllabus, and then you pick out the topics without necessarily the details, and you have your topic list, which is a quick check on how you are progressing on coverage. Now, remember we mentioned here that teaching practice involves induction. Now, in induction, it's about bringing the mood of the audience into the topic. Make sure that your audience is ready to receive the message. So, you can start out by giving a problem, an exercise, verbal questioning, bringing up a song. Now, then there is introduction to the topic. You can introduce the topic by stating its title, by telling the learners the learning objectives, by telling the learners the performance objectives that are expected. How do you organize the topic? Please remember relevance. Is it relevant? Organize it, sequence it, edit the content, and think about the time the lesson has been allocated. Reinforcement. To reinforce, what can we do? State facts and figures. Give problems or exercises. Give examples. Ensure that there is a two-way discussion. There you reinforce what you have taught. stimulation. Make the lesson more interesting by repetition. Repeat the main points. Stress the main points. Pause for reflection. Provide relevant personal experiences. And then mind the body movements. Mind the voice modulation. Mind the eye contact and the gestures. Flow. Teaching flow. Teaching is a flow of thoughts. In other words, there is a stream of thoughts. Yes, teaching is continuous. Therefore, there should be no interruptions. Teachers, make sure you put the phone where it belongs. Do not allow the phone to interrupt. Summarizing. Summarize your lecture. How? By checking whether you have explained all the learning objectives you've chosen. So in other words, at the end, repeat the learning objectives. See whether they have been achieved. Now, summarization is not evaluation or assessment necessarily. Skills of classroom management. Dear teachers, it's very important to manage the classroom, because when you manage the classroom, there is maximum participation of the learners. How can you manage the classroom? 1. Call pupils by names. Put up rules or norms for classroom behavior. Give clear directions. Have sufficient work for each child. Keep pupils within the eye span. Make sure where you are standing, where you're located, you can virtually see everybody. Shift from one activity to the other. Recognize and reinforce attending. Make sure students attend. Manage behavior and check on inappropriate pupil behaviors. Now, how do we integrate teaching skills? You have to remember that different individuals are stimulated differently. Therefore, it is important to integrate varied skills to cater for the varied types of learners. Assessment. How do you assess? You can assess as you yourself, so it is one-sided. You, the teacher, assesses how the lesson has progressed. It can be a two-way or two-sided assessment. Even the pupils can let you know how the lesson has progressed in addition to your personal assessment. It could be a third-party assessment by another teacher, by the head of department, by the DOS. Evaluation. Evaluations can be self-designed using the understanding of the learning objectives of the lesson. So, effective evaluations keep in mind the learning objectives of that specific objectives. Now, you notice here, you can score a lesson either as good, 6 to 8 points, as an average lecture, 4 to 6, or as a poor lecture, below 4. And if you look at, let's assume we used a 10-mark point. Look at your lesson in terms of how was your induction, how did you organize the lesson, did you reinforce, did you stimulate the learners, was the vocal clarity acceptable, did you express very well yourself, was it relevant, was it well sequenced, was it useful for the learner? You are evaluating yourself. So therefore, remember the following. Teaching skills can cut across all subjects. Teaching skills are useful for every teacher to teach a subject. Teaching skills is a set of teaching behavior of the teacher that facilitates the learning of pupils. And once you get these, you will be a teacher whose subject will be loved and remembered.